Hello and welcome to Ebbs and Flows with Erin, or welcome back to Ebbs and Flows with Erin. I'm your host, Erin, and as always, I am so grateful to have you here with me today. Today's episode is a bit of a special one because this week's episode marks 1 year since I launched this podcast with part 1 of my 3-part Effexor series, which is what was the main catalyst for me starting this podcast in general. So today I just want to reflect on the past year a little bit, share some lessons that I've learned and continue to learn through podcasting, and just say thank you to anyone who has listened and connected with me through this platform. It has been the biggest blessing, and we are just getting started, to be honest. Welcome to Ebbs and Flows with Erin. In this show, we're getting real about navigating the ups and downs of life together. I'm your host, Erin, and we're ditching the pressure to have it all figured out along the way because honestly, nobody does. We'll explore all things healing, growing, creating, and connecting. And if you deal with anxiety, depression, being a highly sensitive person, or just feeling overwhelmed by life sometimes, I see you and this show is for you. My intention with these conversations is simple: to leave you feeling empowered, validated, and most importantly, reminded that you are never alone, no matter where you're at on your own journey. Learning that we all have the power to heal genuinely changed my life. And the best part, healing does not have to be complicated. The smallest changes really can make the biggest impact, and it can be joyful, fulfilling, and something that we do together. So join me in getting real about what it means to heal. Thank you for being here, and now let's get into it. I honestly cannot believe that it's been 1 year since I launched this podcast. Time feels like such a strange, warped concept these days, but a year ago, on one hand, it feels like forever ago, and on the other hand, it feels like yesterday. The number one intention that I had with starting this podcast off was to share my Effexor series due to my personal experience with being on Effexor, and then most importantly, coming off of it. If you know, you know. And I just came to a place where I felt so called to share my experience because when I was going through my deepest struggles with Effexor and tapering off of it, I was desperately looking for information and connection with others who could relate to me and who could maybe offer me some hope because they were in a place that I wanted to get to. And I found that there wasn't very much information or conversation around this topic out there. I had shared a couple of TikToks on the topic before starting this podcast, and I would get comments and messages consistently. I still do, and it's over a year later. So I just knew this was something that was worth talking about. To this day, as I said, I still get messages and emails from people reaching out about Effexor, either their experience on it or their experience coming off of it, or that they are looking at options and Effexor is one of them, and they are kind of scared to go on it, or they're looking for more information before they commit to going on it. So I'm very glad that I chose to share about this topic and start the podcast off that way. And then I knew that since I had put so much time and effort and learning into bettering my own personal health and wellness, I knew that there was so much I wanted to talk about and could share on this podcast. And the thoughts of, well, podcasts are oversaturated, everyone has a podcast, why should I have a podcast? Like, why would anyone want to listen to what I have to say? Those thoughts had lived in my mind, but they were overpowered by my experience in feeling and knowing what it feels like to feel so scared and alone and confused and lost in your mental health journey and your health journey in general. And then especially the experience with being on Effexor and what happens when and if you want to taper off of Effexor, which is an antidepressant, if I haven't mentioned that. If you're interested in that topic, my first 3 podcast episodes are on the topic. But the human experience that I had with my mental health and experiencing how I was able to bring myself to truly such a different place in life, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, that overpowered the thoughts and the fears and the worries of what people would think if I start a podcast, who was going to listen or not listen. The desire and calling within me to share my experience in hopes of fostering connection and comfort and value to others was stronger than all the fears and the worries and the overthinking and the self-doubt. And I'm so glad that it was. And over this past year, those thoughts do still continue to come up sometimes. But again, and I've had many conversations with people in my life who we talk about how, it is kind of wild to just speak into a microphone and then send it out for anyone in the world to listen to every week. And the thought of that for the majority of my life, up until probably like a year and a half ago, that would terrify me, and it would 1000% hold me back from showing up on a platform like this. But I know that if I stick to speaking my truth, speaking from my personal experience and what I know to be true, and also acknowledging that everything is nuanced and everything can be different for everybody, acknowledging that I'm sharing my experience and my story in hopes that it can be valuable to others, with the confidence that I've seen the evidence myself, then I can't go wrong. Because when you're speaking your truth without ill intent, I'm not looking to hurt anybody or diminish anyone or hate on what anyone else is doing. So I can show up on this platform weekly or as often as I am, because there have been times where I've missed an episode during a week, and that was something that I had to work through and get over with my recovering perfectionist tendencies, which we've talked about on the podcast, perfectionism and being a recovering perfectionist. Reassuring myself that if I miss a week of an episode, everything that I've built is not going to crumble. It's going to be okay. It's not a failure. And I've only missed 3 weeks in a year, which is kind of wild to me looking back. But also, if that changes and I need to take longer breaks in the future, that's okay, which is a lesson I continue to have to learn and teach myself. And I'm just going to probably be rambling a little bit through this episode, so I hope that this is somewhat easy to follow. I apologize if not, but this feels like an episode where I'm just going to be speaking as things come to my mind and my heart. But, okay, now I lost my train of thought. What was I going to say there? We were talking about showing up consistently. Oh yeah, so consistency doesn't mean you have to be perfect. That's a huge lesson that podcasting and showing up on this platform is teaching me. I can be consistent in it without having to be perfect, even in terms of each episode topic. I've talked about before how sometimes the biggest struggle for me is choosing what to talk about next, because I feel like the next episode has to be the best episode and it has to be groundbreaking or, I don't know, perfect, I guess. And learning that it doesn't, but just doing and getting it out there. Of course, I want to keep quality and value and dignity in what I'm saying and creating and putting out. I don't want to put out episodes just to put them out without thinking about how it can value my audience or connect with my community, but learning that not every episode is going to be the best episode, and not everything you do is going to be the best thing you do, or the most well-received, or whatever. That has probably been the biggest lesson, and as a recovering perfectionist, having a podcast where the goal is to put it out weekly has been a fantastic and challenging exercise for me, because I spent so long, years and years and years, dreaming of doing things that I'm doing now, truly just dreaming of them. And I was talking about this with one of my friends recently, that this is a common trait of Pisces, especially water signs in general, astrologically. We can be very dreamy and living up in our heads, fantasizing, daydreaming, and it can almost trick us into feeling like we are putting a plan in motion just by dreaming about it. And we need that grounded, logical element to remind ourselves, okay, we actually do need a plan and we do need to take action for something to actually happen. For so long in my life, and I do believe I wasn't ready to pursue this or do this before I came to the point where I did, so I don't regret this necessarily. I'll quickly share a little backstory as to how I got here. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm sitting in my recording studio room in my house, and I took this room in my home as a sign from the universe that I needed to take the jump and start creating this podcast that I had been feeling called and desired to create, but never really taking the steps to put it into action. But my partner and I came to view this house when we were looking to buy a house. In general, it felt like it was the perfect house for us. And we had been looking for a long time. We'd seen a lot of houses that would leave me feeling pretty defeated and not very motivated. But this one was seeming like a really great fit for us. And then we come to the basement. And there is this room that I'm sitting in. And it had instruments and a microphone in it. And outside of the door was a desk set up with like music production equipment. So clearly whoever lived here was a music producer or something. And the realtor told me that this is a roughed-in bathroom. So it has this soundproofing, floor to ceiling. And they said the owners of the house are willing to take it out so that you can make it into a bathroom if you're not interested in keeping the soundproofing. And I said, absolutely not. This is a sign from the universe. I have so much I could do in here. I have my guitar in here now. I bought a MIDI board for music production a few years ago. Honestly, I need to spend more time on it, but I knew immediately I have no excuse to not create the things that I'm feeling desired to create and play around with anymore. I literally have a studio room in my home. So we bought the house, moved in, and 3 months in, I was recording my Effexor series to then a month later start launching on the podcast. So I don't know if I didn't have this studio room come into my life organically. I don't know how long it would have taken me to actually create my podcast, or if I ever would have. It was on my heart and my mind, but I don't know if I would have. And then this was plopped into my life, and I was like, okay, I have to do this. This is a clear sign to me. But for so long, I did just dream of and ideate things without taking action. So this has been, like I said, a wonderful and challenging practice to have something where I am creating it and putting it out with the goal being weekly. And there's no time to perfect and go back and adjust every little thing, because when I'm listening back and editing, I wish, I would have said this, or I wish I would have said it this way, or I wish blah, blah, blah. There's no time. I don't have the time to continue to go back and perfect, quote unquote, every episode. So this has really forced me to release my perfectionist, people-pleasing tendencies, and it is a constant practice. Sometimes I do stop and think how kind of crazy it is to me that this is something that I'm doing in my life, where it continues to build my confidence in allowing my voice to be heard and allowing myself to be seen for who I am, showing up authentically and vulnerably. Because, again, for most of my life, I stayed quiet. I would mask myself depending on the environment I was in or what I thought people wanted me to show up like or be like. And that creates burnout, anxiety, depression, and you feel lost in life, unsure of who you actually really are. So again, for a long time, the fear of being seen or heard would hold me back, because I was feeling, even subconsciously, afraid of sharing my true, authentic, vulnerable self with others. So now that I'm doing it on this platform that can be heard and seen across the globe, it's kind of crazy. So I am proud of myself. And trust me, I still have those feelings where I question myself and what I'm saying, how I'm looking in showing up. But it's something that I've told myself and committed to continuing to do and sticking to it for as long as feels good. So I just kind of have to push through those thoughts and feelings and do it anyways. And I will say that it feels much better to pursue and commit to doing this podcast and sharing my voice and my experience with others in pursuit of connection and healing and creativity and growth. It feels way better than being stuck in the shackles of perfectionism, overanalyzing, procrastinating, and just staying put, never pursuing the things that I'm dreaming about doing or feeling the desire, feeling called to do due to the fear of being seen or messing up or perceived. It feels much better to just be doing it. Empowering is the best word that I can think of that encapsulates what this experience of podcasting has been like for me. Empowering and connection. Connection's always the number one word because it truly, truly was the number one desire I had for this podcast, was to connect on a deeper level with others. And on that note, I will say it has exceeded my expectations in that realm, because it not only has brought me connection with strangers, people across the globe, but it's also brought me deeper connection with people who are already in my life. Friends that I'm already close with, it's brought me deeper connection because the podcast has brought up topics of conversation that might not be brought up in our friendship otherwise. Or people who I know, but maybe not that well, and it's brought me deeper connection with them because they've listened and related, and so then we connected and had these deeper conversations, because what I crave in life, and I think this comes with being a sensitive person, is deeper conversations. If you've listened to the highly sensitive people episodes we have, you know, small talk is literally painful for us. And so I was so desperately craving deeper connection, and it's brought that on so many levels. And I'm so grateful for anyone who's listened to the podcast, and then extra grateful to anyone who's reached out to me and has shared something that they can relate to, because it truly helps me to feel less alone, and I hope that it helps you, the listener, to feel less alone. Because I think in almost every episode of this podcast so far, I have mentioned that my greatest hope is for you to know that you are not alone, no matter what you're thinking, feeling, or experiencing at any given time. And I really mean that, because again, I know how it feels to feel like you are alone. And that doesn't mean you don't have people who are loving and supportive around you. You can be surrounded by loving, supportive people, but you can still feel alone and scared, lost, confused in life when it comes to your mental health or your health in general. And I so get that. And creating this podcast and connecting with people through this podcast continues to show me and remind me that we are actually never alone. There are always other people who can relate to what you are feeling or experiencing. And there's so much power in simply just knowing that you're not alone. And I was recently at a wellness networking event called the Wellness Soiree here in Alberta. And I was chatting with some of the other wellness professionals, people in the wellness community in this area. It was such a beautiful, empowering, inspiring event. Everyone there had the greatest energy, and they were so inspiring to me. And I was sharing in one of our breakout groups about the fact that I really do want to have more guests on the podcast going forward. I am so grateful to my friends Leah and Summer, two badass, beautiful business owners who have been on the podcast. If you've missed those episodes, you can find them, Babyface Boutique and Balia. And there are other people who I am in the planning phase with to come on and be podcast guests. The truth of the matter is that this is not my full-time job, and it does just take a lot of time and effort, extra time and effort, to plan and coordinate and record with a guest. But I really am so passionate about having more guests on the podcast, because I think having conversation and then being able to share it with the world is so powerful. And this is what I was going to say. We were chatting at this event about the fact that I really feel passionately about that everyone has a story to share, and everyone's story is worth hearing and is valuable to others. There are going to be other people who are going to hear your story and relate. They're going to feel less alone. They're going to feel inspired. They're going to feel motivated. Everyone has a story. You don't need to be someone of a higher status or a celebrity, a public figure, an influencer, whatever it might be, to have a story worth sharing. I strongly believe that every human has a story to share. So that is a goal of mine moving forward. And if there's anyone that you would like to hear on the podcast, or you think would be a good fit for the podcast, I genuinely am open to having pretty much anyone who is open to having a open conversation or has a topic of conversation they want to chat about or share about on the podcast. I'm very open. It's mostly actually putting it into action that I find to be the biggest struggle. There have been people that I thought for sure would want to come on that don't feel comfortable coming on a platform like this and sharing their voice, and that's totally understandable. And then there are people who show a lot of interest, but it's just really hard to line up our schedules. So again, it's just like the logistics that kind of have been holding me back, but I am putting it out to the universe. I want to put more effort and intention into sharing more conversations with other people on the podcast. Other people who are interested in healing, growing, creating, or connecting. The 4 pillars of Ebbs and Flows. Another thing I'm often asked when I mention that I have a podcast is, do you make money from it? And the answer is, no, I don't. And that was never my intention with creating this podcast. I'm open to whatever happens in the future. I never know where this is going to take me, but that's not my intention. Like I said, it really is a passion project. I want to connect with others. I want to share what I feel called to share. And so far, it's been extremely fulfilling in that way. I do feel like I'm just getting started. And it's been 1 year, 47 podcast episodes, 12 guided meditations, 71 countries reached, and 919 cities. Those numbers don't even feel real to me, to be honest, reading them. Like, that doesn't feel tangible. But I can see the stats, and it's true. And like I said, I am just so beyond grateful to anyone who has listened or connected with me through this podcast. I can't believe this is my life, and I'm so grateful to have access to tools that allow me to share my voice and connect with others in such a great capacity. To live in a time where that is possible is such a blessing. It's crazy. I know the internet and the access we have to each other can be a blessing and a curse, but in so many ways I've been experiencing the blessings of it, and I like to focus on that. So I know I rambled along this episode. I hope that something connected with you in this episode, and I'm so excited for what's to come and to continue to connect with you. I am always open to feedback and suggestions. Like I said, connection is the main goal here, so I love when I hear from you guys. And it continues to be my commitment to provide a real, safe, and supportive space for you to show up in, where we can explore life's ebbs and flows together and be real about them and drop the need for perfection, because it doesn't exist. So I want to encourage you to take a moment to reflect on your growth over the past year. Celebrate your wins, whether they are big or small. It's so easy to get caught up in life and never take a moment to reflect and celebrate ourselves and take inventory of what's working, what's not working, what we want, what we don't want in life. And yeah, I think it's important to remind ourselves to take that time to reflect. I would love to hear from you if you want to share maybe your favorite podcast episode so far, or a topic you'd like to hear about in the future. If you want to leave a review, I believe Apple Podcasts is the only platform you can leave a written review, but a review, a comment on YouTube, a message. You can send me a text directly in the podcast description, and you can send me an email. As I've said a million times now on this podcast, I love to hear from you guys, and I look forward to continuing exploring this platform and where it takes me and it takes us, and it feels like we're just getting started. So thank you for being here today with me. I am sending a lot of love and gratitude, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.